On the recording or?
Their Wi-Fi isn't strong enough here for us to do it, so, but there were people expecting it, so I'll upload it right after today.
We could use the bell. I don't know, but we could.
Okay, so do you have any questions, and did you bought anything?
They wouldn't take my money, Rinpoche.
Huh? Oh, yes?
I have, this is referred to as Nagarjuna's thought. And it's where we see everything is non-self-existence, even in samsara and nirvana. And Nagarjuna also states that there's this certainty of cause and effect and dependent arising. Can you help to explain to us how we see these not as contradictory but complementary?
Okay, from the beginning I didn't understand.
So Nagarjuna states there is not a single atom of self-existence in samsara and nirvana.
Yeah.
And then he also states that there is the certainty of cause and effect and dependent arising, which is, I guess, this is conventional reality.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us how we can see these as non-contradictory but complementary?
Non-contradictory with what?
How it doesn't.
How it doesn't contradict. How can there be something cause and effect, and then also nothing has any in existence?
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, any more?
Well, actually, along the same lines of cause and effect, if there's no Atma, no self, what reincarnates?
Okay. Any more?
So, if there is no self, and cause and effect and dependent arising are true, and karma is true, and we reincarnate, where is the storehouse of our actions? How does that exist?
Yeah. Okay. Any?
Earlier you characterized the view, a Western view of Buddhism as nihilistic. If there is no essence, if there is no self, then what becomes enlightened? That was what I heard you say, and I thought that's a really interesting question, and I wonder what your answer to that question is.
Okay. You had something, Bill? No? I thought you raised hand.
I don't have anything right now.
I thought you did it. Hello? Okay.
I wondered how the Yogacara school and the Chittamatra school distinguish how mind and Buddha nature are not. How do they make that distinction? If the mind-only school says that's our ultimate nature, how can that be separate from Buddha nature?
Okay.
So then what's the distinction?
Yeah.
I have three, and they're less questions. And would you, in your own words, describe Buddha nature, differentiate between Zhentong and Zhentong, and describe exactly what is meant by emptiness of interdependence?
Yeah. Okay. So, I think firstly, Zhentong and Zhentong don't think is entirely contradiction or against each other. Don't think that way. Instead, think is progressive. Like to understand. Is not there. Okay. Yeah. So, firstly, don't think about Zhentong and Zhentong is opposition, and contradict each other. Don't think that way, and instead think about compromise each other and more progressive. Zhentong is higher than Rinpoche. That's why in India, known as normal, common Madhyamika and great Madhyamika. So think of that. So, what happened? Battery?
We have more batteries. I'll change battery.
It could have been a connection. It sounded like I heard a hujunk.
It's okay. I'll give you this one. I'll change battery. I changed the battery.
So, so think about that first. Then we should learn first Rinpoche. Why? Because Rinpoche is not contradicting to the Zhentong. Why not contradicting? Because when we talking about Zhentong, we establishing the view on relative truth and ultimate truth. So in Zhentong point of view, all relative phenomena is Rinpoche, which means self-empty. So another language, all relative truth is self-empty, which means Rinpoche. And another language is simple way, very simple way, little bit rough way, all samsara is Rinpoche. Means is empty self. Buddha nature only is not self itself, not empty self, which means Zhentong. So which means empty of other. Empty of other means empty of samsara, empty of relative truth, not empty itself. Not empty itself means not empty it, Buddha nature itself, or not empty of the absolute truth itself. If it is empty itself, then is contradict, it is absolute truth. Okay, try to understand that now, but even you didn't fully understood or no make sense, so okay for a while. Okay.
Speak. Did it go?
Yeah. So, first we learn Rinpoche. All your questions before question is mostly is according to Rinpoche. So, when we talking about Rinpoche or when we talking about empty self, which means is not contradicting the karma, not contradicting the reincarnation, not contradicting with anything whatsoever. We have to understand that first. So, why is not contradicting? Because when we talking about something's empty itself or emptiness, we talking about that, we try to understand the absolute truth. If we talking about the relative truth, we don't have to say anything about emptiness, or we don't have to say anything about empty itself, or we don't have to say anything emptiness. So there's no contradiction whatsoever. So this is all Tibetan traditions. everybody agree. Nobody disagree. Only disagrees how you articulate. They articulate a different way, and sometimes argument how you articulate. So forget about that, because this different way article I cannot say very well with my limited English. But basically it's really you say you argue in the words. The meaning everybody agree. So which means karma, anything, karma, karmic action, karmic propensity, everything is relative truth. All relative truth. So all relative truth at the same time empty itself. So this is not contradicting. Why is it not contradicting? Because when we say relative truth, we talking about only relatively true. We're not talking about absolute truth. When we talking about empty itself, means we talking about absolute truth level. In that point of view, there is empty itself. What that means is you cannot find essence if you analyze properly. So when we cannot pinpoint the truth with an analytical mind or any other method you use, you cannot find any truth. So that means is already essenceless. That means essenceless. But we're talking about essenceless. You just have to remember always the two truth. Never forget in in the mind. You're talking about absolute level or you're talking about a relative level. You have to just know that. Then if you think about absolute level or ultimate truth level, then it's essenceless, empty itself. You cannot find any substance truth. But that doesn't contradict whatsoever. In relative level, still works everything. Just, before we have lunch, we are hungry, and then you eat lunch, and then whatever the taste you experienced, your taste experience, and the other person test experience, not same. All of you eat the same thing, but cannot be same experience. But still makes differences. And you all now full and hungry makes differences. Having food or not food makes differences. Having drink or not drink makes differences. Have sleep or not sleep is differences. Everything, like somebody say you nice word and criticism or whatever makes differences. All relative truth. All relative truth. But if you analyze it, you cannot find any essence why you upset, why why you so happy, and you don't find any essence whatsoever, and for anything. So I think the people's always misunderstanding is always mixed. You mix the two truth, and then you expect in one thing. And so that's why it sounds contradiction. Of course contradiction. If you only relative level you think about that, relative truth level, then not truly exist. At the same time is true. Make differences, everything. Of course contradiction. You accept that contradiction. And if you think in only absolute truth level, then again contradict. It's not essence, essenceless, empty itself, the same time, Buddha nature, we want it, we want to reach, we want to experience, all contradictory. So you just have to distinguish these two truths all the time. And then is not contradict, never contradict, no possible. So one method, that's easiest method, I think, you separated the two truths. Because one is only relatively true, one is absolute true. Cannot be one, impossible. But if you don't want to take that option, then Dzongkhapa, he has another way. He has another way articulates very well. So that means he said the emptiness and the interdependence is same nature and different aspects. I mean, everybody agree with this, but Tsongkhapa, he has, more clear and emphasize on that way. So what he's saying is, he even said like this. Nawa timdel hoa mi patang, tonga clean travi koa ni, chit sosra nawa techet tatong tapi gombar topamit. Which means all the truth of the interdependent rising, interdependence, basically no rising, just say the truth of the all interdependence and emptiness. If you see is separated, and then that means you didn't realize Buddha Shastamani's view. Namjik rinjok me pa chikcharta. Nihi is din Zhentong kanjigna. This is taixya par zopain. So, which means one day you realized whenever you see the interdependence, then is concrete your realization of emptiness. Something like that happens. That time you realized, you completed the view. That he said. What means basically, simple way, what he's saying is, if you see, it is interdependence, therefore emptiness. It is empty, therefore interdependence. And helping each other, if you understand that way, and then you completed the view, that he said. Okay. If you understand this, you can understand this way, no problem, if that is helpful. But if not helpful, then you can try other way. You separate the relative truth, the ultimate truth. So the relative truth said something like all is truly exist. Karma, virtues, non-virtues, marriage, everything true. That's why you have to make increase virtues, actions, you accumulate merit, and you purify negative karma. That relative level, we're talking about relative level. So, and somebody say, all is illusion, not true. Even Buddha, our Dharma, everything is illusion. It's not contradict, because that you're talking about the analysis of the ultimate truth. That's why it's not contradict. It's two levels. Let's say one person said, oh, the cake is fantastic, delicious. One said, oh, terrible, this cake, I don't like it. You didn't disprove anything, that cake. Okay? Because two people. For one person is very delicious, for one person is terrible. It's same thing. For analyzing, finding the ultimate truth, then is empty, becomes all our karma and everything is essenceless. But when you note that point of view, in general, normal experience point of view, all is so true, is huge differences. I had good sleep last night and not, make differences today, what I'm feeling. So I didn't have 3 days, I have food, and now it's difference. It's not contradict at all. So that you have to understand. 2 ways. You know, like empty, interdependence, interdependent rise in karma, you know, accumulated merit, and you know, negative karma, all interdependence. One aspect that, the other aspect is essenceless, empty, nothing, or illusion. Is not contradict. Same essence, different aspects. That's one way to understand. The other way, oh, this is relative truth, this is ultimate truth. Of course, that can be same. You know? So 2 ways. Which one do you prefer? Try to understand that first. The only problem, not problem, but how do you know this is essenceless, this is illusion? That methods you have to find many ways. The traditionally and the text status is there's a far different logics. These logics I try to tell you. I not articulate very well with my limited English, limited vocabularies, but even I did it, you could be headache. But the simple way saying things not that hard. You can think that 5 logics you maybe already heard before. You can think that way, and I'm sure they're stated already in the books. Even in my book, I think I stated the second book, probably. Second Sacred Truth. All of them. But also you can think in your own way. If you just have to think, somebody asked you, how do you know this or illusion? What do you answer? What's the best answer? In what way makes sense? You have to move your brain and think about it. Okay? So I'm not ignoring the other questions, but you have to understand that first. Okay? So, is make any clear? If it's not clear in this subject, you tell me. We can discuss more.
That's helpful, thank you. It is more clear for me.
Okay. Anybody else? Still confused or not?
That's confused, and so you said that the Zhentong view is that the ultimate truth is not essenceless.
Yeah, this is that still I'm not discussed yet. Okay, first think about why is empty still same time interdependent and rising all true, or make differences. You have negative karma, positive karma, make differences. Purify negative karma, not purify, make differences. You know, accumulation merit or no merit, make differences. That part you have to understand first. Still, at the same time, is illusion empty. Why? Understood that part?
To me, they have to be two sides of the same thing. They can't be separated, because if it's not empty, then it can't change. It's eternal. But things are changing. They're a process. So they're saying the same thing, but in different ways.
Yes.
Which is one of the ways you said of doing
You
it.
prefer the two-sided one. One nature, two aspects.
It's impossible to be different, but if you consider it differently, I guess that might help. But to me, they're inseparable.
Okay. How many people prefer that way? His way. How many? The interdependent and empty is the same nature, two aspects. And that
Two
way,
sides of the same coin.
or two truth is totally different, you separate it. Which one you prefer? Which one the first?
First one.
Huh? First one. Who's second one? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but for me, I recognize that I understand relative truth, but I don't understand absolute truth.
Yes. That we're not talking about absolute truth yet, okay?
Right.
We just try to understand empty and at the same time true, or you can say illusion at the same time true. How come, That's what we try to do.
I think Rinpoche is for a lot of people, for some reason they believe that there is not really something that is absolute true inherently out there. Because if you just try to say that there's something absolute, you actually reification of your ego grasping to something that exists. So they really try to say that the problem we try to grasp it to something. And even grasping to the ultimate truth itself is a form of grasping, so it's not totally free. You have to reify something, that you try to transcending something, that you try to escape from something. So you say this was an illusion and it's called suffering, and people want to be liberated, and they try to transcend it. And somehow that there's something in invention or something that you're grasping into, so you go for that. And they said that the Buddha, the whole reason of liberation is to destroy the whole point that there's something for a person to grasp into. But if then you try to get something just to grasp another something, they're not just almost like you just another form of suffering. So that's why they don't see as the ultimate truth as truly existing as something that valid, because it's not create a cessation of suffering versus like another way that like other religion like Hindu that escape this thing, go to heaven, something that still have something to hang on to, and so is the mind still not totally free? Yes, mind still like bonded by something, to be bound by something. That, what I'm trying to.
Okay, I understand.
Yes.
Okay. So now I have a question for you. If you are nobody confused, right? That part. Only one part. One part do you not confuse? The others we can talk later. Okay. Interdependent, true, and then same time illusion, empty. You're not confused that place, yeah? That part.
No.
Okay, nobody confused. Good. Okay. Now I want to. What do you know? I want you to tell me what do you know. Why is empty? What does make you understand empty and illusion? Somebody say this. What do you say? Somebody say, for me this is true. This is all true. You and me here, all true. This is weather, or this room. Everything is true. how do you claim is illusion, empty, essenceless? What does make you think that? What do you say? Yeah.
It's impermanent. Even the stone at some point or another will not be there in the same form. And we all color what we see. As you were saying, we eat the same food, but it tastes different to us.
Mm.
I will look at this and I will have an impression of what I'm seeing. It may not be what other people are seeing at the same time. So my mind is creating this reality.
Okay, good. Eddie? Yeah?
I believe the Guru Sankapa says that the door to realizing how this exists is through dependent arising. Therefore, when you show the book, if you break it down, then it begins to destroy its self-existence.
Okay. Any more? Any different? Anything, scientific way, your own mind way, text, traditional way, anything.
What's your self?
You first.
It's a more scientific explanation because with quantum theory, atoms and particles break down into nothingness and emptiness.
Yeah.
Therefore, instead of the universe creating self and other, we are creating the universe and the appearances that we see.
Hmm. Okay, what about your feeling?
Okay, what about my feelings?
But you can break down same as the scientific breakdown or the this articles, particles and everything. Can you do that the same way? Your feelings and those?
The feelings and your emotions.
Yes. Your emotions, feelings, your perception, everything.
I haven't thought of that scientifically.
Anybody thought about?
Yeah, so I think scientifically, if something that inherently existing, it has its own self-power, it totally doesn't need anything, that object is incommunicable. That means no way for you to build contact to that object. Nothing, no exchange possibility, because it doesn't need anything. So the exchangeation of energy, perception, whatever, is impossible because that object is something that truly has no nature and self-power, doesn't get the power from any other place and doesn't need anything. We cannot perceive it. It's totally black. It's totally non-existent to us. So the incommunicable, by the virtue of cannot be communication with the object, that object is not existing. And that object don't need us, so it's not dependent on anything. So by that way, if we can communicate the object, that means that object exchanging power with us, exchanging communication with us, exchanging information with us. So nothing in this world that totally truly.
Yeah, nothing truly exists. You can say that, but what reason you give for your perception, emotion, or is not true because of what? You have to give valid reason separately.
Can you repeat again?
He's saying you have to give a valid separate reason about feelings. He's picking feelings because Sherry picked material things. So he's saying, what about feelings? What's the argument against feelings having a
Because
truth?
if you feeling is because your mind imputed on that whatever you're seeing, right? Because you look at that thing and
you mind and put it then over the mind.
So
what about the mind then? Mind itself.
Even myself, you look at it, you would not find it because it's going to be the infinite regression. Because the mind look at the mind look at the infinite regression.
Okay, this is already Buddhist, the lowest school already analyzed.
Okay.
So they're saying, so Danten Shokji Chame means I'm talking about. They're saying only the atom should be the truly exist, but everything is not because you can break down all of them. Even they are not completely right, the founder, but they break down everything up to the small atom. They call it directionless of the atom. There's so small and no directions, no size. They're talking about that.
Yes.
But they're talking about the mind. They say they break down. You cannot physically down because not physical, but you break down with time. You know, okay, what the shorts of the mind, then you know, like you cannot find any essence. So they already did that. Okay.
You talk about the eight no, right?
You want to say something?
No sensation, no rising, no emulation, no permanence, no coming, no going. And the eight no.
Okay, anybody knows the five logics and the book? Huh? No? Then you need read my book. Huh? Or you know a little bit. Difficult when you read?
Only because the words are hard to understand.
Yeah,
Once
yeah.
you understand the logic is not
Yes,
hard.
yes,
It's
yes.
just getting the logic,
Yes,
the
yes.
language is hard.
Yes, yes. The words, yeah, because that means, you know, the traditional words always difficult. So, if I speak perfect English, I can make it easier. But when I can't, then I have to use traditional words. So, everything in my book more easier because I know the essence. Then you make, then your language also good enough to simplify. But some part, some these physical logics, you know, like difficult to, not enough the language, you know. Somebody have very good vocabulary, like first language, like that kind of person. If they understand this logic, then you can make very simple. Okay? So, the most important, I think the most important, you can break down all these things and nothing you can pinpoint, basically. These all the five logics is just different tools. Different tools you break down. Let's say there's solid big rock. You have to make that rock is like sand. And then you have five different tools. All these five different tools you can make like sand. That kind of, they are tools, okay? But you can have another tool, or you can have a better tool. You don't need even the five tools. Just one tool can do everything. You can create that. You can make that. But the important, even more important, what is benefits? What is the benefits? We can break down and we realize that this is all illusion. You know? I think, let's say, if we intellectually understand all these five logics and everything perfectly, still I would say you can benefit maybe 10%. 10% of from, enlightenment, you know, or maximum 20%. Cannot be more than that. So what the rest? The rest have to be through the meditation. But the meditation means you are just completely entered this non-conceptual state. Go beyond concept. Go beyond logic. You have to go there. That time only you can benefits. You can experience the benefits. 50%, 60%, 70, 80, and continue, 100. But at the same time, we have to really, really realize such fortunate, even we can discuss this illogical way. And your conceptual mind, let's understand this, is incredibly fortunate. Do you know why? Because this is the real studied enlightenment, really, But to become like that kind of meditation realization, you need a lot of relative support, such as merit, purification, like all this compassion, all of them you need. Love and compassion, dedication, you need all of them. Without this, almost impossible. Even you understand intellectually. So that's why I'm saying before say that somebody, philosopher, say, I understand Buddha nature. I am agree. Absolutely I'm agree. I'm agree. And the scientists say the same thing. But no more progress. That means you have no support. This compassion, love, all these relative incredible good qualities, not support. So that's why you just stuck there. No more progress. So this we have to understand. Okay? But let's think about, small way. What is benefit? Everything is illusion, not truly exist, self-empty. What does help? In simple way. Let's say, last night, earthquake many times, right? So right now, if it's earthquake, there's a huge hole here, and we all fell in. We all found Mars inside. How do you feel? It does any help. Buddha, you call in Buddha, you call in Jesus, you call in, bodhisattvas, you call in Dharma protectors. Many things, it not really help. It's not really help. The only possibility helps if you remember or illusion not truly exist. At least you had some habit to think that way. Something dramatic things happened. You have habit to, there's no self, it doesn't matter. Or illusion, who cares? Even you had that some attitude that million, trillion times really helps. Even just intellect level, some habit. But if you have meditate level, you have that kind of, you click it on this non-conceptual mind, and no worries arises, anything whatsoever. That is incredible. But think about the worst scenario. Anything worst can happen. There is no any other solutions. There is nothing's solution on the universe. And that has happened. What do? I think this, even you intellectually, you have some habit, this, I think that's the best. I mean, not best as from the meditation experience, experiential, this meditative experiential, this all empty. That's of course the best. But even you have intellect, some habit is going to be wonderful. So So think about that. That's why it's worth to study, worth to meditate on, which even every day can think of that. Especially whenever you have upset or you don't like anything. Try to not take too serious. I mean, even you have to take seriously 99%. Try to reduce 1% not to take too serious. I think that helps a lot. Don't you think? You want to say something?
It helps a tremendous amount.
Yeah. So what else do we do?
I think also if you...
What else do we do?
If you get angry or mad, to realize that the other person is just a process. They're part of causes and conditions, and you can't blame the whole universe. You're trying to blame the one person. When you realize the one person is not really existent, then it's hard to be mad at them. And in the same way, when you're unhappy or sad because you're not getting something, when you realize it's just an emotion that's coming and going, things are fleeting, you don't really exist, then you don't grasp, you don't hit yourself again. Of course I have that habit, so I have to challenge myself every time. But that's a really, really good way to let go of it.
Yes. So that means this is totally we're talking about the Rinpoché. We're not talking even 1% Zhentong. We're talking about Rinpoché, okay? But this Rinpoché is a process for Zhentong. So that's why Zhentong Ba not denying this. Absolutely agreed, 100%. So that's why there is no contradiction between Zhentong and Rinpoché in the relative level. Relative emptiness, no contradiction. Okay? You got it? So now I'm going to talk about what Zhentong is talking about extra and what is the benefits. What is the correct about? Yeah.
So unless I've misunderstood what I've been taught, I believe I've been taught that the two truths are the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So when we're talking about emptiness, we are talking about the ultimate truth. And so in all of this discussion, when we say the ultimate truth and we say emptiness,
yes,
those are the same thing. But then you said we're all talking about conventional truth.
Yes.
But we're talking about two sides
of
the same coin, the ultimate truth and conventional truth.
That's I'm going to talk about.
I don't feel that we've been only talking about the conventional truth.
No, I will talk. I will clarify this. Okay. Now, the problem is this language of emptiness. Okay? This emptiness. That's the problem. So, when we say emptiness, you referring to the ultimate truth a lot. Why is we referring to the ultimate truth a lot? Why? Because all the sutras, tantras, everywhere, Buddha stated that. Buddha referred to that. Okay? That's why everybody, Rinpoché Ba and Zhentong Ba, they both have to refer that. Okay? You got it? That's very clear? Yes, clear? Okay, now, referring to the emptiness, to the ultimate truth, absolute truth, Rinpoché Ba, Zhentong Ba, both. They both referring. So no argument. Okay? So now, what is the differences? Zhentong Ba make difference emptiness. They have refer difference. Rinpoché Ba emptiness is always referring to ultimate truth. Always. 100% ultimate truth. And Zhentong Ba not always referring to ultimate truth. And make 3 different emptiness. Sometimes make 7 different emptiness, but 3 is enough right now. Try to understand. Let's say 3. Okay? So, maybe stone yet he can, Devjin Yopi stone, Ranjin stone yet he na, stone in the Hibayan, something like that. So, what I'm saying is, there's emptiness, nothingness of emptiness, and there's existent emptiness, and the nature emptiness. These 3, if you don't understand these 3, you think emptiness is only one, then you confuse. That's Zhentong saying. Okay? So that means, usually we call 3 natures. 3 natures. In Tibetan called Ngawang, these 3. So this is Jitamata language, also they have that. And Zhentongpa also they have that. So which means, the simplified meaning, the Kantak means imputational truth. Imputational. You can say imputational truth, or you just say imputational. So which means something elaborate, not truly really exist. So that emptiness is never exist. Emptiness. So emptiness, usually empty means not there. So we know empty cup, empty bowl, empty house, empty room, which means we refer always there's nothing in it. Right? So when we're talking about an empty room, we're talking about empty, not people inside the room, not object inside room or something. We're talking about that. We're not talking about room itself. They're separate. Room and this empty is very separate. So when we say empty, the imputation emptiness, which means not in the room, nothing. The emptiness, you only talk about this nothingness. You refer in that. Okay? Then emptiness exists in emptiness. That's second one. So that means similar. Before we said it is interdependent, but you cannot analyze. It is illusion. So emptiness. Remember? So the emptiness, interdependent, same time, same nature, different aspects. That they're talking about in Zhentong language. They call Yopi, which means emptiness, existing emptiness. So basically, you have one nature, two aspects, because one you say an emptiness, because if you analyze it, you can't find essence. That's why we refer emptiness. But if you not analyze it, always there, always make certain differences, make sense. You can see, you can touch, you can, smell. So that's all exist. So that's why I call it existent emptiness. Now, that is called nature emptiness. That only refers the absolute truth. That is high level of emptiness. Okay? So in logical way, you don't even call them emptiness. It's almost like contradiction. Something is not on emptiness, but you still call emptiness. To me, personally, it's kind of like a contradiction. But at the same time, I understand why they have to call emptiness. Why the Buddha nature have to call emptiness. I think One reason you have to call this, because Buddha refer all the time the ultimate truth is emptiness. So you have no choice. That's the one reason, in my point of view. The other reason why you call emptiness. If you don't call emptiness, this Buddha nature, and then it's very dangerous, ordinary sentient being's mind grasping that Buddha nature, you grasping as same as samsara. You know? So probably that's the reason Buddha always have to refer emptiness. So Zhentong means you explain that emptiness more explain. And sometimes, that's why this emptiness is not self-emptiness. It's not empty itself. It's not essenceless. Why? Because Buddha nature, because the absolute truth. But still you call emptiness because Buddha referred that. Then what kind of emptiness? Empty of other. You know? Why you call it empty of other? Because empty of samsara, empty of relative truth, that Buddha nature. So, that's why now I'm saying, remember, Zhentong always emptiness is only absolute truth. Emptiness and absolute truth is the same meaning. There's no inseparable, no categories. And Zhentong point of view, no, emptiness, before I said seven emptiness, which means people say, oh, room empty of people is emptiness, still emptiness, but they call, in Zhentong point of view, they call, oh, that's very ordinary emptiness. Because you realize Rome is empty of people, you don't get any transformation, enlightenment. But the best emptiness is Buddha nature is empty of samsara. When you realize that gives you enlightenment. But the similar, in one way they are same, because empty, Rome empty of people, and Buddha nature empty of samsara, just same. One way is the same, but a totally huge difference. So that is the Zhentong point of view. Okay? Okay, let's say, I stop here. Is that clear? And any confusion, any of this? When I ask a talking, this only topic, okay? Other things we talk step by step. Yeah?
So I mean, what I've read, from Dog Popa's little bit of superficially his writings and all of that. So the three categories of emptiness you just talked about. I mean, it ultimately boils down to firstly the realization of the person when he observes what is emptiness. So there is the very basic emptiness. Then the middle layer you talked about. It's really not something that's devoid of anything, but there is some space or something like that, where there's some pregnant stuff there, which is still defined as emptiness. Is that a fair assessment of what the second layer of emptiness is? Of course, the last layer is ultimate truth. When you realize Buddha nature, everything is empty, the same way like the room is empty. But here emptiness doesn't mean it's totally devoid, but there's something which is there as pervading some essence of space.
The second one is you can see it as equal as Rangtongpa's emptiness. Rangtong was absolute truth, emptiness, and in the second one you can see similar. I see that way. And it makes sense?
I think some other translators would say the empty order or the Buddha nature is the equivalent to the clear-like mind. So the clear-like mind is Buddha nature or empty order, because the empty order impurity, empty order samsaric stuff is the pure and is holy nirvana and blissful, whatever, all the quality inside there. They use the term clear-like mind instead of Buddha nature. But their argument is that, seems to be even from His Holiness the Mahabudra, so even that clear-like mind itself seems to have all the good quality, but the argument from their school philosophy still say that even the clear-like mind itself is also empty of inherent existing nature. It's what is it's sort of empty of impure or impurity, but it's also empty of inherent nature. That their main driving say.
Okay.
Even that clear mind, you cannot say that it inherently exists. It still is pure, it's empty of the samsara, it's empty of all the thing, that suffering, empty whatever, illusory.
You stay very long.
Whatever, but its itself is still empty of inherent nature.
You are very, very wrong by now.
That's why they said even Buddha nature itself is not totally not empty of inherent nature. It is, even though it's pure, but it's still empty inherent. That's the main argument. So I'm not sure what don't ever have really.
Yeah.
That's why I'm confused in that part. I want to.
That's I will make clear. But this what I said is anything unclear? Everybody.
Where does the three natures, the empty form, the word empty form, does that relate to?
That's last one, Buddha nature.
The Buddha nature, okay.
Yes. When we say empty form, we have to refer to the actual emptiness, this, the ultimate emptiness. Okay? Is it all clear? Okay. So now, if that clear, then I go to Vince talk about. So you agree in all this clear light, or you agree in incredible qualities, right?
Yes.
The same time, you agree in empty of inherent nature, right?
Logical to me, yes.
And that to me is a contradiction.
Why would it be? Because it can be.
So okay, that means the same become relative truth, not ultimate truth. Why? Because you are inherently not exist as equal as the samsara, right? If not right, you tell me what's the difference.
Well, I think what they say is that even though all the samsara and all the quality pure, even that mind itself, look upon itself, can never pinpoint down that as something that locatable mind that is totally pure, because exists, with partless kind of conceptual, and it cannot find it. So even, and it depends, the reasoning is depending on the moment before that. That mind, or stream of mind, of clear-like mind, is dependent on this.
Yes, dependent on something, so yes. You are still interdependent.
That's why the argument, that's why I was.
You are still interdependent, so then you are no different from samsara. The samsara is impermanent and suffering because of interdependent. Even virtues qualities still is dirty merit because impermanent, because is suffering nature, because is interdependent. So now you are clear lights, absolute truth, also you put in a category, same category. So to me that very contradict. So that's why I see Rangtong is not the ultimate view. You contradict that logic, but also you contradict all third Dharma will, all Buddha's teachings, the third Dharma, the most, all of them you contradict, and you contradict the all highest Yoga Tantra. So that's why. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about Buddha nature being full of all qualities? So when they phrase it that way, what they're referring to?
Yes. So Buddha nature, qualities, even that Rangtongpa way, everybody agree. You know, to me, nowadays all Rangtongpas not Rangtongpa anymore. To me, they are not completely Zhentongpa and they are not completely Rangtongpa. They're just between there, lost. So that's why they are agreeing incredible qualities of the Buddha nature and luminosity. All of them you agree. You have to agree because you have no choice, because Buddha said everywhere. But at the same time, you claim I'm Rangtongpa. So you are not Rangtongpa because you, the ultimate nature, you not agree in one way, not self-empty, not empty yourself. You agree and have the qualities. At the same time, you say interdependent, and you say is inherently not exist. So that means again, then interdependently only exist. There's no other way. Then you put category of the relative truth. So you don't have even the true truth.
So it sounds like you're saying it exists, but depending on the qualities.
Yeah, because that Rangtongpa way of saying, you know, one way you agree and have qualities, and it's not fully empty, and the other way you said only inherently not exist. Inherently not exist means not truly exist. And not truly exist but still exist means then a relative truth.
But we've defined it as being existent, dependent on its qualities.
Yeah, so that means you are interdependent.
Yes.
Then you are same category of the no better than relative truth.
But it exists ultimately also in that it is dependent on things, and it exists in such a way that it's dependent on things. What it is empty of? It's empty of existing without dependence, which is the second definition that you gave. It's empty of existing without dependence on other things, and the thing that it sounds like it depends on is its qualities, which you said are all the good qualities.
Empty itself or empty of other?
That's what I was just going to say. It's a bit confusing to people in general. So maybe make the distinction between when we say Buddha nature is endowed with all qualities.
Yeah.
What is the difference between that idea of endowed with all qualities versus phenomena and samsara? Like, how are those qualities different?
And
yes.
I wanted to say also, my understanding is that yes, samsara is nirvana, and it's the dependence on how you see it. If you see it as a process, then you're in nirvana. If you truly don't attach to it and you don't cling, if you truly are free and liberated, then you're in the same process, but it's not a samsaric process, it's a nirvana process. Nonetheless, you're in that process. And I've read samsara is nirvana as a conclusion, right? Nirvana is samsara, samsara is nirvana. So...
You saying samsara and nirvana is non-contradictory or contradictory?
Non-contradictory.
That's Rangtongpa.
Yeah.
That's what I've been taught. That's what I'm trying to
Even
understand.
explaining the difference between the idea of the qualities and the phenomenal interdependent.
Okay, let's say what Chloe said. We clarify this. Okay, she said all samsara have qualities and the Buddha nature have qualities, endowed of a lot of qualities. What are the differences? The samsara have qualities is limited qualities. Is contradict one quality and the other quality. It cannot be same. Which means red cannot be white, white cannot be black. They all can, then they can't be same. Okay? All of them only limited and contradict each other, not the same. So the Buddha nature endowed qualities means non-contradictory quality. One Buddha nature have every quality. Every quality exists in limitless. So go beyond conception. You cannot even imagine and conceive the mind. Okay, that is Buddha nature quality. That is absolute truth. So that's why I say absolute truth. And samsara quality, you are sweet cannot be salty, salty cannot be chili, or contradict and limitation, have limitation.
Isn't that the quality is something that's something like based pretty much on the imputed mind, right? Because you deal with perceived quality, but quality not really existing without.
No, you are very wrong, Tompa. You have very long habit of wrong Tompa way of thinking. Okay, let's say. let's say. Remember, Zhentong very agree, no problem with Ramtomba when you, negating all samsaric illusions. Zhentong completely agree with Ramtomba, no problem. So that's why your worry you put aside. Don't think, oh, Zhentong way is something not negating. Don't think that. This is very, very, very wrong. So they both completely agreeing. No any self grasping, nothing. You cannot grasp in anything. All universe, the samsara universe, all of them is essenceless. Illusion. No exception. Even the Buddha, think about this. Buddha and Buddha's teachings, think about this, okay? The Pure Lands and whatever. All of them, no exception. Think about that. So, both Ramtongpa and Zhentongpa, both have no exception or illusion or essenceless. So, put that separate here. They both 100% agree and put it here. Okay, let's say this one. Let's say this one. This one, put there. Okay, they both agree. Now we talk about the ultimate truth. Okay, if you ask Ramtongpa, what is the ultimate truth? The typical answer is emptiness. That's all. Emptiness. Okay. Or every emptiness, if it's emptiness, then is always ultimate truth? Yes. The answer is yes. Okay. There is something emptiness but not ultimate truth? No. Always. That's what Ramtongpa saying. Okay. This emptiness is always empty itself? Yes. And I have different Ramtongpas have different arguments inside each other. Forget about that now. Different articulation. Forget about now. But they all agree or essenceless. That's why they call Ramtongpa. Otherwise, you can't call Ramtongpa. Okay? Emptiness. So now, You ask a Zhentong, is the ultimate truth the emptiness? The answer say yes. And then you think, oh, no, okay, then exactly the same. Not yet. That's alone, you cannot prove they are same. Okay? So I said, is there something, emptiness, but not ultimate truth, exist? You ask Zhentong. Zhentong said yes. And Ramtongpa said no, remember? So then, what is it? Then before I talk about these things, they tell. Okay, another question. Then you ask Zhentong. Is that emptiness the ultimate truth, the emptiness? Is self-empty or other empty? The answer is other emptiness. Oh, now you got different answer. So Ramtongpa said self-empty, remember? Essenceless, remember? Now Zhentongpa said no. Is other emptiness. What do you mean other emptiness? Other emptiness means Buddha nature not empty itself, not inherently exist. It's not that. It is inherently exist. Okay, then why you call other emptiness? Because empty of samsara, empty of relative truth. That's why emptiness. That's why we call similar, we call the room empty of people. Knowledge level same. The meaning huge difference. Why? Because room empty of people is only relative truth. People is a relative truth and room is a relative truth. That's why totally different. But the knowledge level is the same. Why? Because room empty of people means room and empty not same. Not same. So we're not talking about room not exist. We're not talking about that. We're talking about room empty of other people. The other of people. So something other than room itself. So that's why the knowledge very different. Knowledge is same. So we're talking about the ultimate truth, Buddha nature. Buddha nature cannot be empty. If does, then becomes same as samsara. But empty of samsara, so, and then very big differences. So now maybe your long-term habit people have worry about, oh, you say Buddha nature inherently exist. You say Buddha nature is truly exist. You say Buddha nature is not interdependent. Oh my God. Now, then we have a grasp in that, and then we have the same problem like samsara or self and everything we grasp and we think is truly exist. Yes, but different. Because firstly, samsara things not truly exist, but we think truly exist. It's not inherently exist, but we think inherently exist. Okay? It is not ultimate truth, but we think is ultimate truth. You know? And then Buddha nature, you can think is inherently exist, no problem, because it is inherently exist. You can think is truly exist because it is truly exist. Okay? So what is the problem? If it truly exists, the truth, why you can't think of it truly exist? That's no problem. Yet, I have to make this very clear. When I say no problem, you can think like this, means to understand the philosophy, you have to understand this way. But you cannot grasp in a similar, like we grasp in ourselves. You cannot do that. To communication, yes. To understand, yes. But to grasp in, no. Then how you experience only, not intellectually, only experience through the meditation. this Buddha nature truly exists, inherently exists. This you have to experience through the non-conceptual meditation, not intellectually. Intellectually only helps you the direction. Okay? So is that clear? Okay, let's say, if that point of view, then you look at the Rangtongpa, you have problem. Why problem? Because you put same category, both true truth is essenceless, both emptiness, both empty itself, both interdependent. That's the problem. So that means your meditative experience and your intellect have no difference because you put the same category. I'm not saying, you have to understand this again, I'm not saying somebody believes Rangtongpa cannot have realization when they meditate, they never experience the ultimate truth, Buddha nature. I'm not saying that. But philosophical level and communication level, you have problem. How you articulate is difficult. You make contradictions. That's what I'm saying. And also, before I said, remember, nowadays Rangtongpa is not really Rangtongpa, I say. Remember? Mm-hmm. Why? Because they're contradicting many themselves. Why they contradicting themselves? Because they lost. Why lost? Because of, what Buddha said everywhere. You have to agree. At the same time, your way of emptiness is not very correct. That's why you lost. When I say this, again, don't offend and don't interpret it very wrong way. I'm not saying every person, lineage, or Rangtong practitioner never have realization. No hope realization. I'm not saying this. Okay? They can have degrees of realization. But when they complete realization, that time they know. That time they know fully the Zhentong view. Okay? But what is the problem? The communication is contradiction. That's all I'm saying. From the beginning, you are Rangtongpa or Zhentongpa way of you thinking, philosophy. Is make any difference if your path is faster or slow? I believe perhaps do. But definitely not stopping huge obstacle. You don't. Why? Because Rangtongpa is correct when you negating the relative truth, samsara, you are 100% correct, no problem. That's why you go process. And Zhentongpa doing the same thing. Zhentongpa needed to do the same thing. It's not, Zhentongpa means from the beginning you not negating nothing, or samsara truly exists. It's not that. So that's why. Okay, is it clear now?
Yeah. So, question. So from a practical standpoint, holding the Zhentong view, I think you just probably said it, holding the Zhentong view, how does it impact your meditative practice? Does it only impact at higher levels where you perceive the states compatible with Zhentong, but from an immediate perspective, holding that view doesn't impact your meditative practice? Mm. Does it?
Doesn't take back you.
Does it, I mean going to Andrew's question, holding the view, the Zhentong view, how does it help you during your meditation?
Because even your intellectual level, your intellect, your idea is not wrong from the reality, and you make distinguish the two truth very well, and so that's why it should be a lot of merit created from this. So it should not have any obstacles at all, right? I mean, obstacles from this view. I'm not talking about you don't have any karmic obscurations. I'm not talking about that. Yeah, but if it's wrong, if you think in this, you could have a little obstacles from the viewpoint. That I don't know.
My question is would it be, if you establish chanting too early and people haven't really explored, would it be the danger that they grasping to something that too early and the self always tend to...
If you understand, there's no dangerous, because Zhentong negating equal as a Rantong. So you cannot, no possible. But if you misunderstood, of course obstacle.
I think it's just because the Gelug are the main lineage that teach emptiness, especially in our area. And that's definitely one of their arguments, that you must understand the Rangtong first, or you'll never understand the Zhentong, and that it's
read Torpopas. Torpopa said, Torpopa felt very sorry for the Rangtonpas, because they have, we call Lukta, wrong view about Buddha nature. So that's why the most important, they have wrong view about like self-empty. So that's why he felt very sorry for them. When you read his text, he almost looked like crying for them.
Yes, I read that.
Oh, you read?
So Buddha nature feels to me like space, which is its concept, and so it requires somebody to impute the concept, and so it feels dependent on an imputation.
You feel the concept and then what?
Like space. I'm comparing it to space. It feels conceptual like a space, and therefore it requires a valid cognizing sentient being. I know, I'm sorry I sound like the Gelug training I have. It requires a valid cognizing sentient being in order to impute it. Therefore it is dependent on that valid cognizing sentient being and the imputation.
Yeah.
Therefore it is merely imputed, and I realize I sound Gelug, that's my training, so.
Yeah.
So what's the counter to that?
So when we, the sky and the sun obscured from the cloud, is sun really affect the sun? You know,
Is what the sun?
the cloud covered the sun. Is affect the sun?
Is affecting the sun.
No, he's
Hide the sun. Hide the sun for only for us. When a particular place hide for us, but not for sun itself.
if we're above the clouds, is it affecting the sun?
No, sun not affecting nothing, and not hide everywhere. Only one particular people, one particular location. So that's why anything we have problems with the Buddha nature is our own problem, not Buddha nature's problem. Is that answered? No? What is his question, simple way?
Maybe it might be.
This sounds like arguments I've given to the Geluks, so I do.
No, I don't
understand
think, but
it,
I think the thing you're struggling with, that you're arguing around, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just like, here, Buddha nature is beyond concept, so we have to understand beyond concept, and not and not put it into the subject-object conceptual description. Is that, because your argument is based on putting it into...
What he said, simply?
You have to say it again, but your argument was based in having a subject and an object, having a relationship.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's conceptual.
Yes.
So we have to understand that we're moving beyond concept. So Buddha nature is beyond all concept and all of beyond the subject-object description.
I think I understand where you're pointing.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, she said is correct. So many people say this, they don't understand and say, oh, Buddha nature or the ultimate truth cannot be interdependent, because dependent, we have the big dependent on our, the concept, dependent the subject, they say like this. So this is wrong, because they think is the subject and object dependent on that. But the Buddha nature, the ultimate truth, dependent nothing. Dependent nothing.
So can it be perceived?
Huh?
Can it be perceived? Sorry, it's just
Perceived? Cannot be perceived? Yes.
Can it be perceived?
Yes, you can perceive. So that doesn't mean Buddha nature depends on your perception.
So aren't there an infinite number?
The sun we can look at, we can see the sun, but the sun is not perceived, dependent on our perception, our eyes.
So I could talk about a million things in the exact same way with the same arguments.
Like what?
I could make up any word and I could describe it in the same way. It couldn't be discussed.
Do one.
Be argued.
Do one. Do one thing.
Blagye. Blagye. Blagye, it exists. It inherently exists. I can make up any word.
You're saying you can make up a word
and I can make the exact same arguments, and I don't end up anywhere different.
What Blagye? I don't know.
He's just making
It's
up
a
a
made-up
word.
word.
He's making up a word. He's trying to say that I could use that argument with anything.
Oh.
So it's like you could say,
no.
Because there's a tree outside, just because I can't see the tree doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah.
So it's like saying, just because I can't see my Buddha nature and it's there, doesn't necessarily, you're saying, make it...
Doesn't make it real. Doesn't
beyond
make it there.
concept or real to you.
And I could do the same thing for other things. But then it comes back to the only way you know this is because you have perceived it, and now I'm dependent on the perception, but it's there whether I perceive it or not. Blagye is there whether Rinpoche perceives it or not. It's the exact same argument.
No, because if you have a black bear, like a Buddha or everybody respected and incredible enlightened, knowing and enlightened people, if you can refer them, and many realizations, they realized sounds and everything, you can refer million, trillion things, then yes. But you don't have that, you just make it up yourself.
Agreed.
Maybe it will help, because Taranatha this is one line from the other book, Taranatha basically said that this is really hard to grasp, because one of the only ways to validate it is through the meditative experience that only the Janam can.
I understand where he is pointing. I see where you're pointing. It's simply the logic behind it.
You can look at one side saying what it's not, and the other one is and the other side saying what it is, or what it is endowed with, all aspects.
Yes, somebody like Buddha will know and enlightened, and you make a difference in history. You can refer the sutras, tantras, and then you can have referred the millions followers, and if you can refer everybody's dedication on that, and everybody had a result and realization on.
I understand.
That make a very difference than somebody just suddenly said something.
So by the same argument, then the Jesuit God exists.
God exists.
The heaven exists, and it's eternal by that same argument. In other words, if a lot of people believe it and have come to realizations from it and support it, then that's a reason for it to be true. then I can apply that same argument to, I'm just picking the Catholic religion and the existence
Yes.
of eternal heaven and eternal
Yes.
hell.
Yeah.
Yes.
So by the same argument, that exists, but that is contradictory to the Buddhist view that you can always burn your karma off and eventually become enlightened. So the argument presents two things which are true by the same argument, which are contradictory. So the argument doesn't feel comfortable to me.
Yeah, but not same, because in my point of view, when I run, oceanography, when I research, all other religions, like the God believes in everybody, only minorities have a little explanations, nice explanations. When I look at these small explanations, then I can, if I wanted, I can interpret this unlike Buddha nature way. For me, no problem. But the majority how they present is something illogical. Is not supported by logic, is not supported by science, but Buddha nature distance, more support. So we are interdependent. We are relying on interdependent now. So that's why we need support.
I do feel in my heart a lot of what you're saying, and as I said, I've used those arguments against Gelets before, but the logic that they use back to me feels, from a rational point of view, I'm challenged to
Yeah, but logic don't have the ultimate answer anyway. So logic itself is already relative too. So it's good enough to journey for a while. Yeah.
Would you see the need for a component like faith of some sort even in Buddhism?
Faith?
Faith.
Yeah, faith is optional. Faith is one option, because we have only concept of mind, emotions and feelings, perception. We don't have only that, ordinary people. So the all phenomena is not enough measured by them. When you measure by them, then you have faith, trust. We have to use trust, faith, devotion, many things. We have to use them when we have the shortage of our capacities. So, in that way, it works. Why? Because nothing inherently exists anyway. So, how you things exist and work for you interdependently is then you are dependent on your faith and your belief. So then again makes sense. Then it makes a difference in your feeling. It makes a difference in your existence.
I can try to explain using Gila. Tell me if I'm wrong, okay? I can try to explain in a sort of reverse Gila thing. So it's saying that Buddha nature is empty of everything other than its own existence. And its own existence, Buddha nature, is limitless, infinite manifestation of Buddha qualities. Okay? And then if you were to look at that conventionally, your perceiver, subject, and object are actually just the Buddha nature manifesting of infinite qualities, but from a limited view. So this one sees the limited quality there, the samsaric aspect in this, but it's not really, because it's just only Buddha nature. The other doesn't even exist. But does that kind of make any sense? I'm trying to
Yes, makes
reverse
sense.
it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Does that make more sense? Yeah.
That was exactly the insight I had a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So, when we always use the knowledge is the space is for emptiness. We use the knowledge as emptiness, mother. We use analogies of mother. We use knowledge of spaces. Why we use mother? Because something the humanity come from. Mother is come from, Without exist mother, you will not exist. That's why we use in the knowledge. And we use a space a similar way. Why? Because the space, if it not exist, nothing cannot rise, cannot, anything. So that's why is the space we use as source. But is space creative? Is not. Is space on rely on everything? No. But everything is rely on space. So similarly, the Buddha nature is not rely on nothing, not independent nothing, but everything else dependent on that. So not interdependent. Interdependent means each other, but that's not each other.
Should we take a tiny break?
Okay.
Stop and break?
Yeah, we take break, then we come back.